What's up out there? Yogi Lonich here. Welcome to Hago Workshop. I'm here in Zagreb, Croatia. Just want to say thanks to Hago and to Butch for having me. Thanks, Butch.
Thank you, man.
And yeah, here we are. We're going to talk about different music stuff today, anything music related, and Butch will be monitoring questions, so just feel free to chime in when something looks interesting. You could.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm Yogi. I'm from LA. Sorry, pričam loše hrvatski, so samo engleski.
I will translate.
We're going to talk about different guitar things. We're going to talk about career. If you guys have questions about my international touring experience or recording in LA or artists that I've worked with, that's cool. We could talk about guitar playing, of course. That's why we're here. Improvisation, blues, rock, jazz, different styles, and harmony, whatever. It seems like there's a lot of focus in general, not just in Croatia, but just in the world with like chops and playing fast. And of course, we all know that slowing it down is a little bit better, but also like feel is really important, especially like in a jazz or swing feel or any kind of soulful type of thing. You know, like say we've got a tempo that's like, let's see, I'll just put in I got a little loop pedal that I'm working with right now. Let's do something in, try D. There it goes. Okay, so there's different ways. Am I looking at this camera, right? This one's for guitar, right? Okay, so that's a nice little groove, right? Now, there's different ways to swing with this, right? You could swing really fast swing, like, you know, that's really a tight swing, but or you can straighten it up, like straight would just be like, right? Or right? It's also a strange feeling, right? Then there's, of course, like in-between swing, where you hear most American people swinging, which is more like this, like. And I'm also laying back behind the beat, as you can hear. Like, I'll do a really simple example of that. Like, listen to the last note, how laid back I am. Like, right? Instead of, right, that's on the beat. Right, that's kind of square, right? So lay back behind the beat. It almost sounds like I'm falling behind the time, but it kind of gives you a way to put some emotion into it. So there's really, the only way I was really able to sort of learn that is just listening to records. I mean, along with some like Brazilian styles of music where they have these strange rhythms that we don't hear in the West too, you know, like, or in America, like you have these kind of feelings that are like, you know, you don't have those kind of things in American music, but the only way I could sort of get these feels is really just by listening. I mean, you could try to lay back and listen, you know, but it's listening to the old records and listening how they swing a lot is really going to be the way to do it, and just playing a lot with people that you like the way they sound, of course. You know? Yeah, so I really recommend, like, and let me give you another example of like a groove for instance, maybe some guys might play a groove like this, like for a funk groove, maybe, you know. That's very straight, right? Or you could put a slight swing on that, not like, right? That's a little bit too, you know, too uptight, you know? So if you find like an in-between something, find the in-between swing between that and like, so in-between be like, it's almost like reggae. So it's like that kind of feel. It's not right. It's more like Latin music, like straight, like that's very straight, even eighths, and it's not like swing where it's like. So you got this sort of in-between thing. And some of my favorite drummers like, I don't know, like Bill Stewart or even Keith Carlock or those kind of guys, they really have that sort of swing thing that just brings that feeling to me. You know, or you can think of it like even like the meters, like Zigaboo or you know, Sissy Strut, where you hear like. It's actually easier to do it at a slow tempo like that because 2, 3, 4. It's almost like Hendrix on like. You know, you get that kind of thing where it's just like that in-between groovy. You can think of it like as kind of New Orleans, like. There it goes. So that's exactly the feel I'm talking about.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions for you. Alen Bakaric is asking you, what is the best approach to play the changes and through changes?
Okay, great. Alan is actually a good buddy of mine. What's up, Alan? Playing through changes. Well, the main thing is, well, for jazz approach, sort of bebop approach, is like landing on chord tones on strong beats. For instance, if you have a progression like, so basically chord tones is the most important thing. So major 7, A minor, D minor, right? So turn that off. So you want to basically think of chord tones. This is at the fundamental basic chord plane over chord changes thing. You don't want to just play chord changes because that's not really improvisation when you're just playing chord tones. I mean, but that's a really good starting point. So if you have a, say, C major 7th, C, E, G, B, right? So a good place to start would be C major 7th arpeggio, like, right? You know. So a good start would be to learn C major 7th, maybe, or C major pentatonics across the neck, for instance. You know. You know, that kind of thing. You know. Yeah. That kind of thing. So that would be your sort of C major world, you know. And even if you can think C major scale, of course, but then you get kind of, you hit some notes that are maybe like a bad idea. Like you don't want to play F over a C chord. That's like pretty much like the one bad note that kind of, you know, right? So you don't want to play, you know, this sounds good, major 7th, right? But once I play an F, it's no good. And those are just rules that you learn, you know. You know. But you can go, you know, so you can pass through an F, like I'm going G, G flat, F, E flat, E, which is kind of a typical enclosure, bebop enclosure. Right? So, right? So but so you kind of do that with all the different chords. The next chord we had was A minor, right? Which is A minor 7th, right? You can use what we call a Dorian, which is basically the same as a G major scale, the same notes. But it's nicer just to think of, you know, basically the A minor arpeggio, A minor 7th arpeggio. Maybe throw a 9th in there. 9ths are kind of like my favorite tone, I think. You know, just sounds great. 13th is a little bit cool too. It's a little bit like dark and mysterious, but it's kind of like you hear it in bebop a lot. You know. That's actually another scale called Melodic Minor scale, which is sort of like Dorian, but it has a major 7th. So you have, right? So you get these kind of cool, this major 7th sound, which is, right? You hear it, so you hear it in gypsy music, gypsy jazz, like, you know. You know. Right, get that kind of sound. So that's another cool sound for A minor. We're just going over the chords, and then of course D minor, you got right for D minor 7th or D minor 9th, D. Right, those kind of sounds. And then for G, You have, at the basic chord, you have G mixolydian, which is basically G major with a flatted seventh, which sounds nice over that. Right, so you get. That's all G mixolydian. If you want to get cool with this kind of sound, you can play D melodic minor, which makes your G mixolydian, it gives it a sharpened 4 degree, so you have kind of a Wes Montgomery sound, like you know. Right? You know? Right? So, and then of course, but this is actually, since the progression is C major to A minor, D minor to G. Now because this G is moving from 5, which is to 1, now when you get to a 5 chord that's moving up a 4th to like some sort of a 1 chord or any kind of movement that's moving up a 4th, you can alter that chord. So you can go, you can play G7 sharp 9, G7 13 flat 9, you can play G7 sharp 5, you can play diminished, you know. And then you can resolve. So there's a couple different ways to attack that. You could, is my knee in the way of this camera when I do this? I don't know. So the way I usually use melodic minor more than diminished, just because I can sort of relate more to melodic minor. It's easier to sing. We'll get to singing too. That's like sort of an important part of this. But if you're playing an altered chord, like for instance G sort of altered or something going to, right? So those notes are basically going to be G and then flat 9, sharp 9, 3rd, and then you can have that note, which is sharp 4. You can have a 5, you can have a sharp 5, flat 7th. So you can have all of those kind of notes. You can think of this as, it's a little bit different what I just played. I just played all of the notes that I like, but you can play A flat melodic minor. So if you have this chord, then you have this. You know? Yeah. So you get those kind of sounds. I'll play the scale too. So it's melodic minor up a half step. So start on A flat. You get those kind of sounds. Yeah. Let's go. Or right, and then resolve to right. So you hear those kind of sounds a lot, and then the other way to approach it is using diminished scale, like or right, which I'm playing the half step, whole step diminished scale, which is right, and you can do all sorts of interesting things like, because you have this scale, since it's symmetrical, it repeats itself every minor third. So if you notice, the pattern goes from, and then if you start up a minor third from that, right, you get all the same kind of patterns. So whichever pattern you're playing, whether it's, you know, any kind of pattern that you could put together from a diminished scale, you can move around in minor thirds, which is a nice thing. You also have all these triads inside a diminished scale, which I love, the sound of triads. So like, for instance, in this diminished scale, right, you have a G major triad, you have a B flat triad, you have a D flat triad, and an E triad. So if you have a chord like, let's see, right? So you can have all these triads like E, G, B flat, you know, which they sound pretty bizarre, or D flat. So you can play these sort of unusual patterns. Yeah. And then, right? So any kind of pattern that you like with diminished, that could be used as a 5-chord resolving to whatever one. So getting back to Alan's question, how do you play over the changes? So it helps to, and this is like, again, this is basic, this is not like a rule how to play jazz, but you want to try to land on some chord tones, you know? I'm just gonna play that same simple progression, just minor third over D, major third over G. Stay on the major third. For the major 7th of C, up a half step. For the minor third of A, the root. Stay on the 5th. Same thing. Right? Melodic minor. Right. So we kind of have, as you can see, I'm basically trying to land on chord tones in between some of the licks and things that I'm doing around it. So over C, trying to land on a third or a major 7th, or a root is kind of square. It's not the best choice, at least on the, if you're playing a major 7th chord, it just doesn't sound that, you know? So I would recommend landing on a major 7th, you know? And so you can think of some little line, you know? Then we go to A minor. When you hit the A minor, try to land on a chord tone, you know? A, C, E, or G, or 9th. And then when you get to the D minor chord, also one of those notes. And then for the G, you can do root 3rd, 5th, flat 7th, or you can do any of the altered notes. Resolve. That's the 5th of C. So the trick is kind of like landing on chord tones with that. I also want to talk to you guys about Motivic Plane. I do this with some of my students. We'll just do it over one chord, maybe just over A minor, this is sort of a rule that I learned, you know, when I was young, studying like Bach and different things, like they have this thing like the trinity of music, right? It's very religious, early music was back in the day, but things in threes seem to be really strong. So like when you're doing musical motifs, I recommend thinking in threes, in really basic threes, where you have an idea, repeat that idea, then the third time, develop the idea a little bit, and then go to a different thing. So it's kind of like this group of threes, and it's a really basic concept, but you don't hear nearly enough. Usually you hear sort of a lot of like, I know this lick, then I know this lick, whatever. Then I know this lick, then I know this, it's like, that's really not making music, because imagine if I said, I know some big words, dinosaur, presumptuous. If I just said a bunch of big words like that don't go together, then it doesn't make sense. So we're trying to communicate here. So let me try to do something with a nice, easy groove. Let's see. So. Okay. Okay, how's the loop? That's good, okay. So you just start with taking two notes, maybe the fifth, and maybe the fourth. Right, so let's take, so let's do it, so now we'll put it in rhythm, like, do that again. Now slightly change it. Now next idea is a new idea. Do that again. Now develop that. Now that idea. Again. Now change. Now new idea. Now that idea. Get it how I'm doing it? New idea, let's see. Another idea, again. Now another, develop. Weird note, right? Repeat that. Resolve. Intervals like. You get it, right? So motivic development, and it doesn't have to be hard. You can just start with like two notes. Excuse me, the leftover COVID. Just kidding. I got my mask, just in case you guys are feeling paranoid. So just, you can even do things with rhythmic motifs, where the notes are like, could be the same note. Like if we're in that groove, maybe. You know what I mean? So like you could start a solo, like even just like, that's another thing I wanted to get to is like timbres of the guitar. It's like, you could start playing a lick. Let's go back to a little groove. Let's just change key, G minor, let's see. Okay, so we can go kind of like, say we're going to start a solo. Yeah. Right, maybe. Maybe. So you can kind of get these tones out of the guitar that are not based on effects, you know, like just maybe pluck your string, you really dark, get a tone like, right? Maybe some beautiful tone here where you pick more here, and then maybe switch it, you know. You know. Yeah. Right. So playing on different parts of the neck, also using your fingers, like, you know, maybe. The loop is a little off, it's messing me up, right? You know. Yeah. Right? So using different timbres is another way of motivic improvisation too, like not, doesn't have to do with just, you know, playing the note like da, 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 again, da, 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 you know, whatever. You can kind of, you know, just kind of like different ways to engage your audience with that. Okay, so so I know I didn't teach you how to like play over changes, but the basic idea is like creating motifs is like communicating with your audience. So let's maybe we go back to that little chord progression. Just we'll do a little bit of it. So. Right? Okay. So repeat that, right? Different way. Different articulation. Maybe repeat that. Just the arpeggio. Da 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 da. Get it? So yeah, I did want to talk about singing, and I always talk to my students about singing. You've got to connect your body and your voice and to your hands. It can't be just about your hands playing these notes. So I'm always telling my students, tap your foot, get your body into it. You know, it's kind of nothing worse than seeing guys just, you know, you're like just kind of like doing these gigs, and they're not really like, I mean, they might be really feeling it, but you have to like sort of engage your body a little bit, in my opinion. You know, at least most of the guitarists that I enjoyed watching, like rock guys like Hendrix, Jimmy Page, it's like, you know, it's got to be sexy. It's got to put something into it, because if it's just like, you know, your audience isn't going to be engaged by that. But so singing is super important, because the way I think of music is basically numbers or intervals. I don't really think about this is a D or this is a G or this is a B, even though I sort of know it because I've been playing since I was a teenager. But I think of it as more like sounds like intervals. Like I think I want to hear a fourth or an 11th. So if I'm playing an A minor, I want to hear, if I'm playing A minor, I want to hear, right? So, and you want to have that connection where you know what you want to hear. Like if I want to hear, like if I want to hear, say, if I want to hear the ninth, ba, right? So different things like that. Or if I'm in D minor, ah, that's the ninth of D. The third of G is ba, right? Right? So kind of do your ear training and get to know your intervals, and at least not, like, I don't have perfect pitch, but I have relative pitch. So so that helps me really connect with the sounds that I want to hear, you know, in harmonies, or if I want to. So if you're, so kind of like people always say, how do you get those sounds, or what are you playing there? So if your voice isn't developed and your ear is not developed, you're kind of not going to know what to play. So it's really about getting your intervals together, like being able to recognize intervals, like that's a second, that's a minor second, you know, whatever, fourth, fifth. So there's actually a great website called musictheory.net that has these electronic AI, like, you know, different harmony tests and like quizzing, and it plays two notes on a piano and you click which interval you think it is and it'll tell you wrong or right. But I did that a lot when if I didn't have other musicians to work with or practice with or whatever. But it's a really good way to get your ears together. But you want to be singing, you know, it's like guys like George Benson, or, you know, you want to hear, you want to sort of, and it also, when you're singing, it kind of makes you play less crap on the instrument too, because then you have to take breaths, and you're not just running some scales. So if I want to hear, if I'm in A minor and I want to hear, right, I know exactly how to play that, right, because that's just a sound. It's a melodic minor scale, whatever. Right? Right? So make your improvisations come from your voice, and then sort of translate. So you want it to go from your body to your hands, not the other way around. Like, I know this, you know, whatever, this lick. And so I'd recommend you just getting that together. It's totally, and, you know, just kind of get your like vibrato in there and just make it into something that's special. Each note has to be, you know. Like guys like Jeff Beck, or who really like use the vibrato bar, and, or, you know, I just think that's super expressive, and he has his own voice, and I kind of much prefer that than dudes who are sort of running scales, or, you know, or using a billion type of effects. You know, just kind of like make music like that. So that's why I love blues players so much, because it's so simple and. Like that note really matters, you know. I want that note to, first of all, it has to be in tune. Then I have to give it some love, right? So we're basically bending a C. It's a minor third bend, right? Right, so that's another thing. Let's go back to Butch here, because I think I kind of went on that for a tangent.
I have to comment your playing, that you are really, really great person, a great musician. I mean, I'm really enjoying your playing here in the studio. Yeah, I mean.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Thank you, yeah. Butch.
And all these comments, which I'm reading just now, they are in that same direction.
Thanks, guys. I'm actually really, like, I don't think I can actually, the thing that I think I'm good at is expressing on guitar, but I'm like not that good of a guitar player technically. Like I don't have a lot of, my hands are big and I'm always hitting notes by accident and stuff, and I know I'm making excuses, but I have been practicing, so I'm trying to get
Sometimes
better.
I prefer mistakes over right playing. precise playing. But just one simple question, which have a lot of. I mean, it's simple, but it is connected with all this chord theory you mentioned earlier, and chord structure and scales. Simple question: did you go to any music school?
I did, actually, yeah. But I pretty much learned, like when I started taking private guitar when I was like about 12 or 13, I learned most of my chord theory and music theory then. And so by the time I was in high school, I kind of knew about chord building and scale theory and stuff like that. And so I was in the stage jazz band in high school for a couple of years. And then I went to California State University, Northridge, where I studied in the music program. It was like it's called the studio music option. And I studied I had big band experience, small ensembles experience. I got to study with Ted Green, Grant Geisman, Phil Upchurch, a bunch of different LA people, you know. So I did get some proper training, and I also studied classical guitar for a couple of years in college too. So I got that. But yeah, so that's yes, a little bit of that.
So you are reading music, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, you can read charts.
I can read charts. I can sight read charts. It hasn't been a part of my career. My career has mostly been touring in rock and pop bands where we have to like come in and memorize it, you know. Oh. Although I've been doing a lot of these tours in China recently over the past like 5 years, where we're all reading charts and some single lines, and it's like almost 3-hour shows, so we don't memorize the shows. So we're reading a lot on those shows. But yeah, so reading is, although that's, and so I'm glad that I learned to do that in college, but that's not my favorite type of expression, you know, like for me reading, you know, I'd rather be just like grooving and improvising or playing some parts, you know, with a tight band or something. So,
yes, of course.
What else you got there?
Okay, there is one simple question about comping. That's all.
Just comping. Okay, that's great. Okay, so say you got a bass player that's playing this. We'll just do something at E, like. Okay, so you got that. Then you got a piano player that's playing something like maybe right in the middle of the range, like you guys always do. You piano players hog all the range. Okay, so you guys are, no. Okay, so the piano player is here. Okay. Okay, let's do that. So now you're a guitar player. What the hell? I don't got a lot of range left here. So maybe you're gonna play something high. Maybe get the tone, make the smaller tone. Okay. Yeah. Right? Maybe just play something like that. Maybe, or, okay. So it's not about like filling up space. It's like about finding your range, or maybe answering, maybe the answering. So so yeah, so comping means complementing. At least that's what I think it means, you know. And it doesn't mean, so it means like filling up the sonic space, not filling it up, adding to it. And sometimes you don't even need to play. Like I'm playing trio gigs with a couple of guys here in Croatia that you guys know, Alan Svetopetric, Damir Šoman, sometimes Dado Marinkovic, and Viktor Slamnik. And sometimes I just don't even play, even it's just bass and drums just playing for like a minute or two. I'll just sit out and I'll just be loving what they're playing, and it's not about, you know, I don't even have to add anything. Maybe I just want to dance, you know. So it's like, and And if I can add something cool, then I will, you know, but sometimes you have to just find those little holes to complement the other musicians. And the same thing goes with, like, if you're comping for a soloist, and say the soloist is playing very inside, you know, like solos, like just simple pentatonic solos, then you don't want to be like playing, like the soloist is playing, I'll play this line. Let's see. So let's see. One. Right. So you're not going to be playing this as a comp player, you know. I mean, right? You're not going to be playing that kind of outside shit. You're going to try to sound like you play with him, like maybe something. You know. Oh, so you get the idea. So try to, you know, and also notice a lot of people, like, when you're playing like some standard music, like Stevie Wonder, Superstition or something, you don't have to jazz it out all the time and play all this outside stuff and make it like, oh, this is jazz. No, just stick to the song. Make it, like, have some respect for the original artist a little bit. And I just noticed that there's kind of like this jazz, like everybody wants to be jazz and play outside, and, you know, and it kind of takes away from the music, but because I know that I used to be that way too, especially like in college, like I was like, how many diminished patterns can I play over this? But you know, but I find that there's a lot of new, like modern jazz, like when I think of modern jazz, like John Scofield, he's one of my favorite guitar players. He made a record of all Ray Charles records. It's an album of Ray Charles songs. And it's, you know, Steve Jordan on drums and great singers, you know, singing. And I would still consider it a jazz record, although it's not full of outside playing. You know, it's just like grooving. Guys are like making music, and it's not like, there's not like a lot of ego and speed in the playing. And there's, of course, there's a genre of like fusion and, you know, stuff where you just got to play a lot of outside notes, and that's cool, you know, like, but just in my opinion, I think it's better to think of it as music, you know, and like not as like fusion or jazz or soul or blues, you know, just try to make music and try to connect with the players around you and with your audience, and don't like alienate. If there's no girls at your shows, then probably something's wrong with your music, so. You know, so yeah, yeah, it's like you don't just want to like make music just because it's just a bunch of musicians there, you know, getting off on it. You want to like have a broad audience. At least I do. You know, I want to connect with everybody. You got something over there for me?
Yes, there is one very interesting question about the lessons you learned on tour.
Lessons I've learned on tour. Don't poop in the bus toilet. That's funny. Actually, like, yeah, well, no, there's definitely like, the main thing about, okay, for like touring experience, first of all, like, well, in America or in LA where I've done auditions, everybody who goes for auditions is great. Not just okay or, you know, whatever, like everybody's great and they audition, and sometimes you're playing against 50 people, you know, in an audition or more if it's like cattle call. But you basically have to, it's more than just playing the guitar part correctly. It's about having a vibe and connecting with the artist and being a good hang, like being, you know, getting along with everybody. And I enjoy that with the Edo Micah band here because we all get along, we're all brothers, we love each other. When we see each other, it's like hugs, you know? And it's not like as much of a job. But in LA, it's like, so when you go to, like if you're doing an audition or something, you have to play great close to perfect because everybody in there is a musician going to go in and play perfect. So something has to be different about you in terms of maybe your style or your look. Artists are very finicky about that in LA. Like if you don't look the part, then they'll almost excuse you before you can even audition because there's going to be 10 other people that look right and play great. I'm not right for every gig, you know, and nobody is. It's like, it's just, sometimes it could be as simple, like I had this gig, my first international touring experience was for Meredith Brooks, and I went in, I played great, you know, and I looked like a goofy 90s hippie with long hair. It was nothing even, but then she asked me, are you a Virgo? And I said, yes. And she goes, we're gonna get along great. My brother's a Virgo. And that's it, I was hired. So it's like, you kind of never know why you're gonna get a gig, or maybe, you know, I auditioned for Guns N' Roses and I did good. I got some callbacks, you know, I did the audition a couple times, but I don't have one tattoo. So, and the guy who got the gig, who's great, DJ Ashba, like he looks the part and he's great. His life is dedicated to hard rock music, you know, so, you know, and it was just, you know, I wasn't right, even though like I played good, you know. But like lessons on tour, you know, basically get along with people, don't be a diva, don't be a, you know, prima donna, show up on time, be professional, make sure your equipment works. Just get along well with everybody on tour, and it's more about the hang than it is about playing perfect or whatever. It's like if you're difficult, you'll pretty much be let go. So, but I hope that helps.
If I may ask you my question.
Sure.
I heard a story about LA music scene, about session scene, something about A call guys and B call or C.
Sure.
What's the difference? I mean, you mentioned that they are all great, but obviously there is a difference.
Well, there's guys like your like the guys that are like on a lot of records, like Lee Sklar on bass, or like Mike Landau or Matt Chamberlain. Those are like all A-list, you know, session musicians, and they're really just phenomenal. They can read, they can play any style, whether it's like metal or jazz or, you know, soulful, or and really creative in the studio too. And then there's B-level people, and there's also, you can think of it as like double scale, triple scale, union scale players, you know, who get, you know, more because of who they are, and they play it on more records and they make more hits. But yeah, so I mean, so really great. I don't know, like there's this, I was doing a session and there was a drummer on the gig, and it's almost like he was able to produce for the producer. Like he was so, like I noticed that the really successful studio musicians are really thinking about the whole production and not necessarily just about playing their part. Like they think about whether they think like, you know, like a bass player might be like, oh wait, this really needs a shaker, and then he's gonna pull a shaker out of it. He's gonna set me up with a microphone, and they'll know like which microphone they like or which one sounds right with their shake. Like I need a AKG 414 or I need a U87, you know, and if you have this, you know, and then they'll get their things and then they'll start doing their extra stuff, you know, and it's like, and just the producer's like, okay, you know, and that makes the producer's life easy. Like when the musicians like basically create the track for them, and they're not like asking a bunch of, well, what do you think? Do you think I need to, you know, once you're like insecure about what you're adding to the tracks, then the producer gets insecure, and then the artist gets, you know, they lose confidence, and then it makes, so it's like I noticed just like on some of the sessions with I've done a couple of sessions with some A-list players, and I didn't know why I was there, but because I'm not, but they were, you know, I just noticed that the common thing with those guys are like really like calm, cool, and really accommodating and like easy, you know, like if the producer says, oh, can you try a different kick drum? Sure, I got 3 other ones here, you know. or whatever. And it's like literally
so be
like
prepared for
really
every
and like,
scenario.
Unlike some guitar players, they show up with 12 guitars, you know,
really?
and it's like, I don't even, you know, it's like I don't have that sort of commitment to it myself.
I heard a story about Steve Gadd, famous drummer.
Oh.
That he's coming to a studio session with his truck full of different drum sets.
Yeah, I mean, most guys in LA who are big, they have cartridge companies bringing their cases of stuff, you know. And it's great. I mean, producers love that. But now, like, with all the budgets going down, I don't think guys are doing that as much. Most of them have studios in their houses and they're, you know, recording. They have a studio in their garage. Tim Pierce, who's one of LA's top guys, he has an awesome house and a studio, and all these amps set up in a separate room and cabinets, and yeah, so it's like, and he can play anything, you know. So.
Okay. Okay. There is one nice question from Željko Rački. Well, it's mostly regarding playing in a band, being a functional part of the band, rehearsing, etc.
Right.
Something about that. These topics.
Sure. Well, I guess that's also has to do with complementing again. You know, like we talked about comping and how to, you know, how to fit your part in the band. And really just like everybody's responsible for the timing in the band, not just the drummer necessarily. And even if the drummer doesn't have the right timing, like he should be on a metronome or something. Like if a guitar player, like for instance, I use sometimes tempo delays, you know, that are like really locked on, and the drummer should stay locked on to that tempo, or at least stay on a tempo the whole song. So everybody needs to have the responsibility for holding time, not just rely, you know, and including the singer too. The singer should hopefully have good timing as well. And yeah, I mean, just like being open to suggestions. And you know, if like not having as minimal egos as possible is great, and listening and sound balance too, like being able to hear everything appropriately. If you're turned up too loud, and that makes you not be able to hear the keyboard players, don't tell the keyboard player to turn up. Maybe you should turn down. You know, so or just situate yourself next to your amplifier. I always like to keep my amp right behind me so that it's the main thing I'm hearing, and if, you know, I'm not bothering anybody with it, but I hear it as much as I want to hear it, and if somebody needs me to turn up, I mean, I can do that. But yeah, just being a team player on stage and connecting with the audience, and yeah, just no egos, and just working together, I think. Yeah. What else we got?
Great, thanks for this answer. And there is one question from a guy called Ken Korade.
Okay, Kenny, I remember. He's my LA buddy, yeah.
Oh, yeah? Can you share some of your approach to ambient style guitar chords, voicings, and...
Sure, ambient. I don't really, actually I do have a delay right here. Let me see if I can turn it on. Let's see. That's a lot. So ambient, I don't know. My approach to ambient guitar. I don't know. I mean, I like second intervals, like this kind of, you know. I like these kind of intervals. So again, I mostly think about intervals when I think of sounds. If I want something really wide and open, you know, yeah, you know, then that's another sound. Or if you want just maybe like something like a, where there's a lot of space between the notes, that's, you know, so maybe you have like, so close intervals, wide intervals, but like voicings that I like, just, I guess it depends on the composition, but I like, I definitely don't use a lot of dominant chords in ambient music, like like jazzy chords, or that don't really fit. For me, ambient music is more like more meditative. Like maybe like that kind of thing, yeah. Whatever. Whatever. So I'm trying to make melodies, I like these add 9 voicings, like, I like minor 11th and whatever it is. Some major 7ths, add 9s. I don't know. Those are some of the things, but a lot of it has to do with the effects.
Okay. Do you think of the modes as keys unto themselves, with chord changes within the mode to write in, etc., or do you think of them as scales to play over one specific chord?
I think of the modes as a sound. Like again, like with my sounds thing, like when I think of fifths or thirds, like basic example, when I think of thirds, I think of happy, major. When I think of minor thirds, I think of sad, right? Same thing go with modes. When I think of Ionian, I think of it's arrived, it's like a home key, it's like resolved. Right? When I think of Dorian, I think that's its own sound. I practiced modal music, like so what, yeah. And I just think of that as Dorian, that's the sound of Dorian to me. So I think, right? That's a whole sound to me. And sometimes a song could have different sounds, or when I think of, maybe I really like this Phrygian natural 2. It's like, it's a mode of the melodic minor, but it's kind of like that Miles Davis-y kind of sound. Right, so you have, this is a mode like, it's similar to Phrygian, which would be the same as, right, but with the third mode. So you have, and that has, right? So yeah, just to answer your question, I think of modes as sounds. When I think of Mixolydian, I think of dominant. Right? Like those are all Mixolydian sounds. Right? Of course, Lydian, it's a great film composing sound, right? You hear this kind of sound. It's kind of like Indian rag kind of. It's a major scale with a raised 4. And I think of notes that are my favorite notes, like the sharp 4, you know, or the major 7th, or excuse me, that's not the, yeah, that's the major 7th. The sharp 4 would be, you know. So, yeah, Locrian, don't use that much. Aeolian is just classical minor, you know. Not major 7th, but similar to Dorian, but it has a regular, not a raised 6. So you have, it's a little more Spanishy. So I use the modes as like creating sounds. Like if I want something Spanish, I might use Phrygian, I might use Aeolian. If I want something jazzy and bluesy, I'll use Mixolydian or major 7th. Locrian, yeah, Locrian is this minor 7 flat 5. Right, which doesn't sit too well on its own. You don't really hear a lot of music in Locrian mode. But yeah, those are all of them, I think. Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian, and yeah, so yeah, so.
Can you tell how did you develop the sense for these modes, for sounds of these modes?
Sure.
By listening to music of some artist, or?
Yeah, like for instance, like modal music, like I listened to a lot of kind of blue and different jazz in high school and stuff, and I was like, my ears got attuned to that mode. I studied at a certain point in college, I studied Indian music, and I got really into there's this rag. I studied sitar for a short period at UCLA Extension, and I got into, it's called
George Harrison influence.
It's called rag yaman, and that's basically Lydian mode. So I got really into that sound. Of course, Mixolydian sound is just dominant 7th, so that's just listening to blues my whole life. But yeah, you gotta just listen to the sounds. Some of the weirder ones, like Phrygian, and it takes a little. It takes a lot of.
That's
you
the
gotta hear,
sound
like,
of Spanish.
Yeah, you gotta maybe
Spanish
listen
music.
to sketches of Spain or something, or whatever, or maybe some flamenco music, or But yeah, so just listening to the music is real key for getting feeling, for the music.
Different tunings.
Different
maybe.
tunings. There is a great tuning called Dadgad tuning. The acoustic guitar won't. I love it. It's Dadgad, and like Joni Mitchell uses it or used it. I don't know if she's still using it. I love this young artist Jacob Collier, and he uses it when he plays guitar. But it's a beautiful sound. It's D, A, D, G, A, D, going from low strings to the high strings. And yeah, you can just sort of create. I also use open G tuning and open E tuning for slide blues, which is basically a major chord. So open G tuning or slack key tuning is D, G, D, G, B, and D. So the two E strings drop down to D and the A drops down to G. And then there's E major tuning, which is basically like the sound of E major chords. So you have E, B, E, G sharp, B, and E. Or you can also make the D natural D to make it like a dominant, I also just use drop D tuning. Just the one E goes down a whole step, and that was really common in the 90s with all the grunge music. So there you have that. Yeah.
Okay, and there is one more question about your practice schedule. If there is one you stick to?
No, but lately, especially during quarantine, I've been almost practicing every day. And sometimes it could be a couple hours, sometimes it could be 30 minutes, but but I'm just, yeah, I've been practicing a lot lately, and I really have practiced more than I've practiced in years this past year. So we all have more time. So it's been, yeah, but I don't really have a particular schedule. I'm just trying to open my it's weird, like as I've been playing guitar now for 35 years or more, actually, and that's a long time. But I noticed that guitar's not getting easier. It's actually getting harder, and it's not, it's because my ears are expanding. Like, the more I listen to weird things like Jacob Collier's like 10-part harmonizing, you know, or he uses things with different tunings, like where he, you know, then my brain sort of slightly starts expanding as far as like the things I can hear, but then my body can't reproduce it. So it's like, to me, it's this never-ending well that you can keep exploring, and it's actually just a little frustrating, because when you're in college and you're like, you think you know a lot and you've learned to burn and your chops are up and you're playing some, you know, difficult music, and you think like, I could play with anybody, you know. I'm like, and I feel like I could kind of play with anybody, but it's just still like I feel more, it's like I get, in a way, there's like less confidence than when you're young and crazy and you just have this like fire. But now it's like my ears are kind of getting more, like I can perceive and hear things more deeper. And so like it becomes like more like, oh geez, like what's, you know, how do I, you know? And so it's like my own little mental internal thing where I'm just like, okay.
Do you think this topic is essential? Because if you don't expand in your listening different kind of music, you cannot hear new sounds in your head, I mean.
Well, sure. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think always listening to different styles of music is great. But don't just force yourself to listen to different things. If you're like a metal musician and you love metal, but if you're discovering new metal bands every week, well, that's great, you know. And you know, there's nothing wrong with having your favorite stuff. And yeah, but I think definitely like listening is 50% of playing. You know, like it's like if you're not listening to the guys you're playing with and hearing what they're doing, if you're just caught up in what you're doing, then you're missing half of the whole experience, you know. So that's when you also want to be singing, when you're practicing, singing your intervals, singing your lines, you know. So go ahead.
One funny question. How do you fight noodling?
Noodling. I noodle all the time, man. It's a big struggle. It actually has to do with being authentic as a musician to yourself. Like there's some licks that I do because I ran out of creative ideas. So say that. Right. So like to me, noodling is not like. You know, that's not noodling, right? Noodling is when you take this Jimmy Page lick that, you know, or whatever, and you could slide it in, but that's sort of like when you know you've run out of ideas, you know, or if you go, you know, that's a noodle, you know. It's like that's Benson lick that I learned, you know, 15 years ago or whatever. But so the key is to like slow down your mind to the point where you're just, you know, playing something simple and playing with the time. You know. I love the sound of a ninth. You know, and then when you're singing the notes that you like, you know, or maybe I love the sound of a dominant 7th sound, a flat 7th. So slow yourself down, play motifs, and like really just get into the sounds that you want to hear, Up to the 7th. Major 3rd. Minor 3rd. So you get the idea. Like that, to me, that's not noodling, and especially if you can make little sentences out of it. But like, we all do like, that's a lick, or that's a lick too. So, but you'll know if you're being authentic to yourself because you can feel it. It's like this bullshit meter that goes off. And for me, it's like, it's often going off, because I'm often playing bullshit. But, but I'm trying, just like you, I'm fighting the noodling, but you can do cool things that are flashy, that are musical, like Jeff Beck would do. Like he might go like, like maybe, something like if you're in this, you might go, that's, to me, that's a statement. And then, whatever, those are all like little statements. Those aren't like licks that he goes home and practices, you know what I mean? You don't have to practice this, So if it's something that you've practiced a lot, like, if that's a lick that maybe I practice, whatever, like those are these little tricks that you maybe practice to get down. And when you're playing those, I feel like that's when you're noodling, and that's when you're not really making the authentic music that you want to be doing. So. Thank you guys for coming. We'll see you online. You guys can check out my YouTube channel, yogimusic.com, and hit me up. I can do some online lessons. And thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Hagau and Buch.
Thank you, Yogi.
Everybody, enjoy your day. Peace.
Pozdrav ljudi.
Great. Cool.